Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today we're exploring a seriously fascinating chapter of ancient text, one that completely redefines how a society viewed the relationship between the divine and, well, the daily grind. We're looking at Deuteronomy 23. It's this incredible source document where the absolute highest spiritual ideals crash headfirst into the messy, practical realities of ancient life.
I mean, you know how we usually expect lofty, head-in-the-clouds spiritual philosophies from ancient texts? Well, these verses totally defy that expectation. They literally give us rules about latrine shovels and ancient camp hygiene. Yeah, you heard that right. This sacred text gets right down in the dirt, showing us that absolutely nothing was outside the realm of religious law for these people.
So let's look at part 1, defining the congregation, who belongs in the assembly. Because logically, before you can figure out how a community lives, you have to define exactly who is actually allowed to be inside it.
And membership here was rigidly defined. We're talking strict boundaries based on physical status and past historical slights. For instance, certain physical mutilations or descending from specific groups like the Ammonites or Moabites, that meant permanent or at least multi-generational exclusion, period. But it wasn't a completely closed door. There were pathways for others. Edomites, for example, were considered brothers, and Egyptians were actually admitted in the third generation simply because the Israelites were once strangers in their land. It's like a giant complex puzzle of historical relationships.
Which naturally brings us to part 2, holy camps and hygiene, purity on the move. You see, these super strict boundaries didn't just apply to who was in the club, they extended right into their physical environment too, especially when the military camp was on the move.
These verses basically act as an ancient survival guide for sanitation. They outline a simple but incredibly strict procedure for managing human waste outside the camp borders. Step 1, go outside. Step 2, dig. Step 3, cover it up. From a modern perspective, it's just incredibly practical for preventing disease in close quarters, right?
But here is the fascinating spiritual reasoning behind it all. The text explicitly tells us the why for these hygiene rules. It says that because God literally walks among their tents to deliver them from their enemies, the camp absolutely must remain perfectly holy and free of any unclean thing. So the physical cleanliness of the dirt they walked on was directly, literally tied to maintaining a divine presence among them.
Okay, moving on to part 3, ancient economics and ethics, social nets, and daily rules. Let's unpack the surprisingly specific frameworks governing their everyday, normal life. We see a really fascinating mix of laws here. On one hand, you have strict prohibitions on certain practices and illicit temple offerings. But then, right alongside that, you have these surprisingly progressive protections, like sheltering an escaped servant in the city of their choice instead of returning them to their master. That's huge. And my personal favorite, it features the ultimate ancient no-takeout policy. Basically, you could totally eat a neighbor's grapes or corn by hand if you were hungry, acting as a sort of built-in social safety net, but you absolutely couldn't bring a vessel or a sickle to hoard it. Snack all you want, but no grocery shopping in your neighbor's field. Now, their economic boundaries were just as strict. There was a complete 100% ban on charging interest or usury to a fellow Israelite. But on the flip side, it was explicitly permitted to charge a foreigner. It's essentially a dual economic system, built entirely around whether you are considered a brother or a stranger to the community.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, to the ancient Israelites, there was absolutely zero separation between the spiritual and the mundane. The sacred governed everything. I mean, from international lending rules all the way down to how you dug a latrine. It really leaves us to wonder, if you viewed the divine as walking right through the middle of your own modern routines, how would such an intertwined worldview completely reshape your everyday life?